welcome back. And I've been busy on this thing with a fair bit of welding. I just couldn't leave it the way it was. It was getting pretty thin on the bottom of some of the cross members and along the bottom of the box section on the top of the bulkhead. So, I mean, I could have got away with it and just sold it like that. I mean, most of these early Land Rovers are exactly the same. They just get really thin on the bottom where all the dust sat and mud and all that sort of thing, and then water would get in there and it'd get damp and they just get thinner and thinner and thinner. But you can see here, this is where I've replaced that outrigger on this side. And you can see here at the front that the front cross member was quite thin at the bottom, and I've replaced that as well. Replaced the bottom section. I've cut it right through here, cut a section out, and then refabricated it and put it back in. And you can see there, it's absolutely perfect. Because this will all be finished in patina. And you can see it where I've been working away on the top box section of the bulkhead. It was actually quite thin in the middle too. Now that is something that they all seem to get. They seem to gather water in the centre. And what I think it is when it's constructed, it's just slightly leaning down towards the centre. So the water always sits, it'll run through the holes and then it'll sit in the bottom, and they always get thin at the bottom. Very rare you see that top box section where it's not rusty at the bottom, or very, very thin. Section here on this leg as well, and a couple of little bubbles in here, but what I done was cut it back to perfect metal, put in the piece, then welded it all in, and that's also the same thing. It's back to perfect. You know, you just, to be doing a patina finish, it has to be right, metal finished. Now, the surprise was there was actually a couple of holes in the bottom of this outrigger here, and I cut it right through here and replaced a fair bit of this section. I could have left it. It was only a couple of bubbles, but it was getting thin in spots, so I just replaced the whole lot and just done it right. And you can see there, same thing again. Just finished off perfect, so that I can get the patina back on it with a little bit of surface rust and some green paint, which I'll take you through. Another thing which wasn't a surprise, and I knew I was going to have to fix, and you can see it from this side here, and so because I've cut out a section in this as well, where the bulkhead, where this leg is spot welded to the bulkhead itself, they usually get water between here, and it traps it between those two sections and creates rust. And 99.9% of all 80-inch bulkheads have got rust in there, and even ones that look perfect, I'll guarantee you they're rusty in there. So what I've done is fixed the leg section here on the outside, so I've just metal finished that back through there, and I'll take you through the other side in a minute. And up here in the top section, I fixed, there was a couple of holes drilled there, so I fixed those holes as well while I was going through. And underneath, if the lights get it right, you can see that I've cut out this whole section right back through there to solid metal. And then I've made this section up, cut the whole bottom section out, made this section up, and put it back in. And you can see here where I'm plug welding. I've got some of the holes drilled here and they're not welded yet, and that'll be pressed back, but that's one there that's been welded. And then over the other side, which I'll climb under and show you in a second. So I'm now in the engine bay. I'm just going to take you through here and just show you a couple of things. But this is the other side where I've already welded. You can see where I've tacked on there. They're going to be flushed off like I have here. So here there's a couple of plugs in there that I've welded, and that's flapper disc back. It's not quite finished yet, but you can see the result. But underneath you can see the join. Get a bit of light glare there, so you can see there. That's the join there. That's the original fold. Bulkhead. That's all beautiful metal. And then I'm going to weld this in a second. Finish all this off, right up through there, about replace. I'll weld right down this section here, and then I'll do these plugs and get that right. And then we'll flapper disc the whole lot back, and you won't metal finish it, and you won't know that it's ever been done. But the bulkhead will be in spot on condition. And okay, here's the trap for new players. When you're welding the box section here in the bulkhead, it is very easy to stuff this up because you get extreme warpage in it. This is very thin. You know, standard, brand new, it's very thin. So it's very easy to warp. You get a lot of heat in it, especially doing a weld like this. Is now absolutely spot on for flat. And I can metal finish that from there, but you can see here there's no warpage, and I've got to be very careful when I do this weld underneath here in a minute that I don't get any warpage in it. I spent a lot of time setting this up so that it's like this. And what I've also done is where there's a slight curve when they make these, when they made them originally, they seem to get it under here where I've got the ruler, they get a slight curve when it was all pressed and spot welded in. So what I've done now is I've just slightly lifted this up in the middle so that it'll run the water out to the edges and it can drain from the edge there. But which you can't notice, you'll never ever see that. But it's protected for the future, not that these things are ever going to go outside again anyway. But that sort of gives you an idea of the work involved with doing this bulkhead section. And as I said, I could have left this and it would have been fine because most bulkheads are running around with that paper thin as it is. But one thing I wouldn't suggest is getting the hammer with the spike on it and going around and just checking it, because you'll be welding it, that's for sure. There is the rare exception. I've got a couple of vehicles which have come from deep in the outback, and you know they're as good as the day they rolled out of the factory. They've got no paint on them, but they are just in mint condition, and that's pretty rare. Because even some of the stuff that you pull out of the outback, some of the metals and minerals that are in the ground out there, they will rust the chassis, the bottoms of the chassis out like nothing. So you know, it just depends on where they went to how good they're going to be. Probably the last place you ever want to get an 80-inch out of is Western Victoria and East and South Australia on the border there. It's just so salty and marshy in that area there. They would just, they would just see through most of those Land Rovers. Even when I was mucking around pulling Land Rovers out there 25 years ago, they were knackered. But there was the one thing about that area was there was a lot of early Land Rovers. I put a lot of light green silver and light green chassis vehicles out of that area. And you can see what I had to do here to get this repair perfect and come back to as far as I needed to get this back to perfect metal, is that I had to take the guard brackets off it. So they've been drilled, they'll be welded and back on again. But I had to take it off to get the repair right, and on both sides. That was done on both sides. Okay, it's the same thing again on the inside of the bulkhead. So I've done the leg here, so they do get a bit thin sometimes on the leg here, but usually they'll come right through. Again, this is quite thin metal that they used in the bulkhead, so they did rust out quite easily. But I've replaced this section of the leg and it's spot on now. But again, this is the inside, so I've cut it out all the way through here and replaced it. And it was quite thin in the center here. There was only a couple of spots, but you know, once this is cut out and you see behind that leg, in between those two panels where that's sandwiched, there's virtually nothing left. It's nearly see-through. So I've gone back all the way back to perfect metal. And you can see there, you can see that the repair is just like it was when it was brand new. And that's got a bit of a curve up where it's pressed into the leg, but that's standard. So now I'll finish this, because I've got it metal finished nicely, I'll be able to just do my little version of the undercoat and then put some bronze green on it, and I'll show you how I get that back to matching the rest of the bulkhead, because the rest of the bulkhead is really quite nice, as you can see. There you can see again how perfect that cross member is. But what I wanted to show you was, there was some build-up slaggy type weld, and I thought I'll grind that off and make it look neat. Now, anyone that's familiar with these early 80 inches know that this tone panel, which was welded to the early ones like this, which was welded to the cross member, that's a seriously strong piece of metal. And it was quality steel. You could dare say that, you know, this steel was quality. And have a look at the cracks. Whatever they've had this tone, whatever they've been towing with this, and whatever they've been doing off the bat, that has cracked that metal right through from one side to the other. I've got to check all this out and V it out and then weld it up. But I just thought I'd leave that and show you, like, you know, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of 80 inches in my time. I've not seen anything like that. That takes, to do that, what was flexing on that to get that to break must have been flexing on there forever. And that is quite something. And in the first video that you've seen when I was going around here, you would have seen that the farmer had cut it with a gas axe out of here. But you can see I've cut that out and welded in a piece, and that'll be all metal finished as well. And again, just getting it spot on. It doesn't take, look, it costs nothing to just spend that little bit of time and get that piece in there perfect before you even start welding. Now all it needs now is, you can see there's a couple of little splits there where the plug, because that's for the old time plug, the original old time plug, trailer plug. You can see it just needs another hole in there because that's been replaced there. And I'll tidy that up with the flapper disc a bit more and give it a bit of a sand with the oil and just get all that round and that right, and then that'll be metal finished as well. Again, there was another bracket welded on here, which I've repaired. And here with this outrigger here, there was another really dodgy piece of metal welded to the original piece like this that was, water had got behind the two and just made it really thin, so I cut the piece out and just went again. And that's just butt joined through there, but that'll come up nicely as per original. And you can see the weld. This is one of the things about being the patina vehicle that I won't hide, and it'll just be a part of its history. I welded back through the back there as well like that. Now there was a lot of ways I could have went about it. I didn't have to weld it, I just could have put a bit of filler because it was welded from the other side as well. But I just thought, you know, I'll weld it up nice and neat like that, put a bit of strength back into that outrigger. There was actually, they welded in a piece of angle from this side to the other underneath the tub. But the tub didn't look so bad, so I'm not 100% sure why they done that. But there you go, that's the way it is. And you can see there's the other repair underneath the steering column. Again, with the same thing. There's a couple of holes that were welded up there as well. I should do that one, that's another hole. Another one of the big things with the early 80 inches, especially the very early ones like this, is that they got a lot of flex through the steering column where it was bolted here. They used to put weld plates in them here and all sorts of things to strengthen them up. They crack all through here because all that was holding the steering column in was basically that thin metal in the bulkhead. And of course it was just flexing all the time and it just crack. So all I've done here is I've got that back to cut that whole section out like I did to the other side, and it's a junction box holes, steering box holes, and then just welded it in, and same thing again. Metal finish. I've got to straighten up, one of the things I've got to do is just take off that handrail and give that a bit of a straighten up. Needs a screw, so someone's tried to take the original plate off it. The other one's been pulled off it, the little one. And just here you can see one of its was the only grab rail that was left on it. The other one was missing. Now, I've got a heap of these laying around and I could just throw another one on it, but you know, why not just weld that back on there? You know, the car's not perfect concourse anyway, and just have its original grab rail back on there. So that's what I'll be doing. It doesn't cost nothing to just run the loader over that and put it back on there. Here we go, back underneath, and I'll give you a good look underneath it. The repairs through here on this bell housing cross member, the one underneath the bell housing. Now again, I've cut these whole sections out, back up into there where it was holy, and then just fabricated up all these pieces and then just put it back to the way it was originally. And this whole section's really was not quite so good, so it all got replaced. Again, on this section here, that was all cut out, and again, you can see the repairs. And no one will ever know that was ever done. Yeah, there's a bit of work in this cross member, but you know, it's still got its original cross member in there. You can get the idea. See up there to that repair I'm doing now. I'm just about to weld that whole seam underneath there. And that'll keep me busy for a while and then tidy it up. I just, you know, it's nice when you finish something like this and you stand back and look at it when it's done. And when it's done right, no one's ever going to know you've done it. You know, that's the shame of it. When you've done a good job, no one will ever know. But the enjoyment's in doing it. There. Again, it was the same thing. Just getting it spot on. And this outrigger here, this whole section in behind it, because the outrigger was so rusty and it held the dirt, it really pitted the outside of the wall on the chassis. So I've cut all of that out, the box section. I've got the video of that, which I'll chuck in this video. And this is the outrigger I'm replacing. Driver's side outrigger for the bulkhead. And I've also cut this whole section out and welded in another piece of plate, as it was quite pitted through there. So strengthen that up like it's new again. I've done more welding on it than I was originally going to do, but I just wanted to be 100% sure this thing was completely rust free. I mean, most people are driving around with the rust that was in this unknown. Anyone that knows these early chassis knows what they're like. Even though they might look fantastic, they're pretty thin on the bottom. But this thing is absolutely perfect now. And this is the two outriggers, and that one there is the lightweight race version. This nasty bit of gear here, it will give you that many headaches. It's not funny when you go around checking your chassis, but you will know with 100% what it's like before it even gets sandblasted, or you go to cut it out, what it's going to be like. So I'll just show you how good this chassis is. And particularly the gearbox cross member, these are usually toast. They just hold the dirt in there. And they absolutely toast. See there's dirt in there now. Have a look how solid that is. And again, all the way over this side, you can hear it. Just, the chassis is absolutely perfect. The old bump stop, been hammered up there when there was no bump stop left in it. That's a typical 80-inch thing, that is. Just a beautiful sound, that. And you can see the little cross members. Listen to that ring. Absolutely beautiful. Again with this beautiful sound. Real quick. Rear cross members are exactly the same. And And usually on an early 80 inch you go like that and you lose your hammer. On a rear cross member. There's its original long pinions in it, which I've showed you before. But what's good about this one is it's got its original Girly master cylinder in it, which can be not rebuilt. But when I hit the pedal, she went to the floor. So that's actually not usually there. Just that seized and full of dirt and rust. It's not funny, but that one there is definitely rebuildable. So that's a win for someone there. And you see a bit of a farmer mod going on there. Look at that one. What a hot piece of gear. And another one on there. That's one of the splits that I've welded up in the bulkhead there, where it was all flexing at the bottom. Another spot where they flex quite bad and crack. But this old bus, even the old swivel balls aren't bad. They're repairable, those swivel balls. Usually they're pitted and destroyed as well. Okay, let's weld this puppy up. I can't avoid it any longer. And it's virtually back to where I want it, bare metal. And then what I'm going to do is I'll finish it off in patina. And so everything's nice and flat where it's supposed to be. All the new pieces that gone in are nice and flush. So now, once I've done all the patina work, no one will ever know that this has gone in. And you can see there that all those plug welds are gone. Yeah, I'll just, there's a couple of little pits and stuff there that I'll play around with. But other than that, that's ready for a blend in.